Some people don't change when you give them a badge. They just get louder. The pharmacy was quiet, soft music, humming refrigerators, tired people waiting for their meds, until a cop started shouting at a trembling grandmother who'd stepped out of line by mistake. In seconds, her pill bottle was on the floor, his gun was at her temple, and everyone was too stunned to breathe. Everyone except the man sitting 2 seats away, watching every detail. Keanu Reeves stood up, and the officer's routine arrest turned into the biggest mistake of his career. Before we continue, thank you so much for being here with us. If you're enjoying these stories and want more powerful, emotional narratives like this one, make sure to hit that subscribe button. It helps the channel grow and it means the world to us. Now, let's get back to the story. The line inside Maple Ridge Pharmacy moved slowly, painfully so. It was late afternoon, the busiest hour in a town where half the population seemed to need either a prescription refill or a blood pressure check. People shifted restlessly, tapping feet, checking watches, sighing loud enough for others to hear. Among them sat Keanu Reeves, wearing a dark jacket, ball cap, and the kind of stillness that made him blend into any environment he chose. He sat quietly in one of the chairs against the wall, waiting for a medication pickup that wasn't even for him. He'd volunteered to grab the prescriptions for one of the stunt coordinators from a nearby set, an elderly man recovering from a nasty fall. Keanu didn't mind the errand. In fact, he preferred peaceful little tasks like this, moments where no cameras flashed, no expectations hovered, and no one looked at him like a paycheck. At least, that's how it was supposed to go. But the quiet died the second Officer Creighton walked in. Everyone in town knew him by reputation alone. He wasn't the kind of police officer people greeted with comfort or gratitude. He was the kind with an ego larger than the patrol truck he drove, a voice that always sounded like he was shouting, even when he wasn't, and a habit of treating every situation as if it were a personal challenge to his authority. He stormed through the sliding doors like he owned the entire pharmacy, eyes scanning the crowd for something. His jaw twitched. His hand rested dangerously close to his holstered gun. The space that had felt tense before now felt suffocating. People straightened up, conversations died, and even the employees stepped a little further back behind their counters. Keanu watched him enter but didn't alter his posture. He kept still, hands folded in his lap, expression unreadable. He'd learned long ago that trouble only grew when you fed it attention. Creighton marched straight into the line, ignoring every person waiting patiently, pushing shoulders aside like they were cardboard cutouts. Several people mumbled objections, but no one spoke loud enough for him to hear. The only one who did speak was the older woman near the front of the line. "Sir, there's a queue," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "We've all been waiting, you need to." Creighton spun toward her like he'd been waiting for any excuse to explode. "You addressing me?" he snapped, stepping close enough that she had to lean back. "You think you can tell an officer where he can or can't stand?" The woman blinked, startled. "I'm not telling you anything inappropriate, young man. I'm just saying there's a line." A murmur moved through the room. People shifted uncomfortably. Some looked away. Some watched with quiet dread. No one intervened. Except Keanu. His gaze lifted and settled on the scene, though he didn't move. Not yet. The officer's nostrils flared. His hand moved even closer to his weapon, not drawing but threatening. He leaned so close to the elderly woman she could smell the stale coffee on his breath. "You know what?" Creighton growled. "I've had enough of people thinking they can talk to me however they want. Let's see your ID." The woman frowned, confused. "My ID? Why on earth?" "Because I said so," Creighton barked. "Now hand it over before I decide you're obstructing an officer." The line froze. The air felt sharp. Keanu inhaled once, slow and quiet. Not yet, he told himself again. Not until the moment mattered. The woman fumbled with her purse, her hands trembling. She wasn't young, perhaps late 70s. A kind face, soft eyes, the sort of woman who probably baked pies for neighbors during the holidays and sent thank you cards for even the smallest kindness. Creighton grabbed the ID out of her hand the moment she produced it, snatching it with a level of aggression so unnecessary it bordered on absurd. He squinted at the card, then narrowed his eyes at her. "Helen Morales," he read out loud. "That you?" Yes, she whispered, cheeks reddening. You on any medications? The question made her stiffen. That's private. Not when I'm asking, he said. What are you here for? You picking up something illegal? A gasp echoed from someone in the back. Helen looked around helplessly, cheeks shaking. Illegal? What are you talking about? I have blood pressure tablets. Creighton shoved the ID into his pocket. Come with me. People stared in disbelief. What? Helen asked. Why? I said come with me, he snapped. You're being detained. For what? She breathed. Creighton smirked. I'll figure that out on the way to the station. Her knees buckled slightly. Someone cursed under their breath. A mother covered her child's ears. A man recording with his phone lowered it quickly, terrified Creighton would notice him. Keanu finally straightened. The smallest movement, yet it felt like a ripple through the room. Creighton grabbed Helen's arm. Hard, much harder than needed for a frail elderly woman. Al, please stop, she cried softly. But he didn't stop. He yanked her forward, and her handbag fell to the floor, spilling medications, tissues, a pair of glasses, a tiny photo, and assorted receipts. She tried to reach down to grab it, but Creighton jerked her upright violently. No picking things up, he barked. Move. Her lip trembled, she was terrified. And Keanu stood up. No dramatic gesture, no loud declaration, simply rising to his feet. But the effect was immediate. Several people recognized him now. A whisper rippled through the room, phones discreetly lifted, and Creighton finally noticed the long-haired man standing behind him. What? The officer snapped. You got something to say? Keanu held his hands up in a calm, open gesture, not threatening, not submissive, just steady. Sir, he said quietly, what's going on with her? Creighton scoffed. None of your business. Helen shook her head weakly. Please, sir, help me. Creighton swung the gun out so fast no one saw it coming. The room collapsed into silence. He pressed the cold muzzle under Helen's chin. Gasps, cries, someone nearly fainted. Keanu froze, not out of fear, but calculation. His eyes locked on the officer's hand, on the angle of the weapon, on the twitch in the man's wrist that told him everything he needed to know. Creighton wasn't in control. Creighton wasn't thinking. Creighton was spiraling. His voice boomed through the pharmacy. You people think you can question me. You think this old lady gets to talk back. You think. Sir, Keanu said slowly, you need to take a breath. Shut up. Creighton's arm shook as he held the trigger half tensed. Helen whimpered, tears rolling down her cheeks. Keanu took one small step forward. A calculated risk. Creighton swung the gun toward him instantly. Back off, he barked. I'll arrest you too. Keanu didn't blink. You can point that at me, he said softly, but not at her. She resisted my order. She was standing in line. Creighton's jaw tightened. His ego was a fraying rope. She disobeyed me. No, Keanu said. She reminded you that you don't get to cut the line. Creighton's entire body twitched with rage. Who the hell do you think you are? He bellowed, spittle flying. Some kind of tough guy. You wanna be a hero, you wanna. Then he paused. Recognition dawned. His eyes widened. You're that actor, Creighton muttered. The John Wick guy. Keanu didn't respond. The moment stretched, thin, fragile, dangerously close to snapping. Creighton swallowed, confusion and insecurity stumbling through his brain. A celebrity in the room, cameras pointed at him, people watching, judging. And an elderly woman trembling beneath his grip. Keanu spoke again, but softer this time, in a tone designed not for Creighton but for Helen. It's going to be okay, he said. Then to Creighton. Let her go. Creighton shook his head. I can't. If I let her go now, everyone here will think I'm weak. Keanu's eyes softened, not with pity but with understanding. No, he said, they'll think you corrected a mistake. A beat of silence. Then, Creighton shoved Helen forward. She stumbled into Keanu's arms, sobbing uncontrollably. The officer pointed his gun at Keanu again, furious that he felt cornered. You're under arrest, he screamed. Don't move. Keanu lowered Helen gently into a chair. Then he slowly raised his hands. Not in surrender. In patience. In restraint. in the quiet confidence of a man who knew the truth. This wasn't over, and Creighton had just made the biggest mistake of his career. The barrel of the gun never left Keanu's chest. The room had gone so still the only sounds were Helen's ragged breathing and the buzzing fluorescent lights overhead. Somewhere, a phone rang in the back office and went unanswered. The pharmacist crouched behind the counter, whispering frantically into a landline, eyes peeking just high enough to watch. Officer Creighton's finger hovered way too close to the trigger. Sweat beaded at his temple. He'd pushed this too far and some part of him knew it, but pride had its claws sunk deep. "Turn around, hands on your head," he barked. Keanu's eyes flicked down, taking in the angle of the gun, the distance between them, the fragile shoulders of Helen still trembling in the plastic chair. He could disarm Creighton in less than a second. Muscles remembered techniques drilled over years of training. But there were too many people nearby, too many chances for something to go sideways. So he did what almost no one expected from a man known for on-screen violence. He complied. He slowly turned, fingers lacing on the back of his head. The gesture was calm, almost casual, as if he were stretching after a long drive instead of staring down a loaded weapon. "Good," Creighton growled, trying to sound in control again. "Now walk." "Officer," Keanu said, facing the pharmacy shelves, "you're making a mistake." "You don't tell me what I'm making." "There are at least 20 witnesses," Keanu replied quietly. "And cameras, and bodycam footage. You really want all of that to show you pointing your gun at an elderly woman in a pharmacy line?" The words landed somewhere inside Creighton's swirling thoughts, but they didn't stick. His pride was shouting too loudly. "Everyone stay where you are," he yelled over Keanu's shoulder. "If anyone moves, I'll arrest you all for interfering with an active investigation." No one moved. But phones stayed up. They were recording openly now. Whatever fear people felt had been shoved aside by something stronger: anger, disbelief, a sense that this crossed a line too big to ignore. The pharmacy doors slid open with a stuttering whoosh. 2 more officers rushed in, hands already on their weapons. One of them, a younger officer named Diaz, froze when he saw the scene. Creighton with his gun drawn on a man whose hands were on his head, an elderly woman crying nearby, 20 people staring, several of them filming. "What the Creighton, what are you doing?" Diaz blurted. "Back me up," Creighton snapped. "He assaulted me, the old lady too." They resisted. Diaz's eyes darted around. Every single witness shook their head almost in unison. The other officer, Morneau, spoke carefully. "We got a call about a possible hostage situation with a weapon." Creighton pointed at Keanu with his free hand. "He interfered with my arrest." Morneau's gaze flicked to Helen. Her cheeks were wet, her blouse wrinkled where his hand had gripped her arm. "Ma'am," Morneau said gently, "did you assault this officer?" Helen's mouth opened and closed. I asked him not to cut the line," she whispered. "Then he took my ID and said he was detaining me. I didn't do anything wrong, I swear." "She obstructed me," Creighton barked. She raised her voice. Diaz looked like his stomach had dropped. He recognized Keanu now too, but that wasn't what bothered him. It was that nothing about this scene matched the training videos or policy manuals. Sarge," Diaz said cautiously, "maybe we should de-escalate, put the gun away, sort the statements out." "You questioning me?" Creighton snapped. "I'm saying you're pointing a weapon at an unarmed civilian who's complying," Diaz said, voice firmer now. "In a pharmacy, full of cameras." The word cameras echoed in the air. Creighton's eyes darted to the security domes in the ceiling, to the raised phones, to the pharmacist still whispering into the landline. Keanu spoke again, still facing the shelf of cough syrups. "Officer," he said calmly, "if you put the gun away and let everyone give their statements, this might still end with an internal review instead of a courtroom." It wasn't a threat, it was a lifeline. Creighton rejected it. He stepped forward and slammed the gun into Keanu's shoulder, pressing it hard enough to bruise. "You like giving advice, tough guy," he snarled. "You're under arrest for obstruction, intimidation, and whatever else I decide to write in my report. Now walk." Keanu flinched from the impact, but kept his voice steady. "At least let go of the lady," he said. "She needs her medication." Creighton laughed, a sharp, ugly sound. She can pick it up after booking. Something snapped, not in Keanu but in the room. A woman near the back, clutching a toddler to her chest, spoke up. "That's enough," she said, loudly enough to cut through the tension. "We all saw what happened. We're all recording." A man in work overalls added, "Yeah, he never touched you. You grabbed her for nothing." "I'll testify," someone else called. "Me too." "Same here." The voices stacked up, quiet at first, then stronger. That invisible barrier, the one that usually kept people silent and staring, finally cracked. Morneau stepped between Creighton and Keanu, hand held out. "Sergeant," he said, using the rank stiffly, "for everyone's safety I'm going to ask you to lower your weapon. Right now." Creighton's hand trembled. He wasn't used to his colleagues questioning him in front of civilians. Ego and panic slammed together, and for a second it looked like he might do something truly reckless. Then he saw Diaz's body cam. The tiny blinking light stared up at him like an accusation. Very slowly, like a man moving underwater, he lowered his gun. Relief swept through the room like a gust of fresh air. Several people exhaled at once, shoulders slumping. "Thank you," Keanu said quietly. Morneau holstered his own weapon and stepped closer to Keanu. "Sir," he said, "I'm going to ask you to keep your hands visible, but you're not under arrest at this moment. We need to sort out what just happened." Keanu nodded. "I'll cooperate fully." Creighton exploded. "You can't talk to him instead of me," he yelled. "I'm your superior officer," he interfered with. "Sergeant," Diaz cut in, voice surprisingly firm, "procedure says we secure the scene, separate involved parties, and gather statements. Right now, you're one of those parties." The words hung heavier than anything else said so far. Creighton's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Morneau turned to the gathered crowd. "Everyone, please stay. We need your statements. No one is in trouble for filming," he added quickly, aware of the fear lingering in several faces. "In fact, those videos may be important." Heads nodded, phones stayed up. Keanu dropped his hand slowly, flexing his fingers to get feeling back. He turned to Helen, who was still shaking in her chair. "May I sit?" he asked gently. She nodded, wiping her cheeks. He pulled up a plastic chair beside her and sat down like there was nowhere else he needed to be in the world. "Are you hurt?" he asked. "My arm," she said softly, rubbing the spot where Creighton had gripped her. "It's just sore. I don't understand. I only wanted my medication." Keanu's jaw tightened. "You did nothing wrong," he said. "You know that, right?" She glanced uncertainly toward the officers. I think so." He gave her a warm, steady look. "You did nothing wrong," he repeated. "We'll make sure that's clear." The pharmacist, finally off the phone, hurried over carrying a small paper bag. "Mrs. Morales," she said, kneeling beside her, "here are your prescription, on the house." "Oh, I can't." "You absolutely can," the pharmacist insisted, "and I'm so sorry about what happened." Helen clutched the bag like it was a lifeline. Outside, more police vehicles pulled up. The sliding doors hissed open and shut as additional officers entered, along with a woman in plain clothes with a badge on a chain around her neck. Internal Affairs, Keanu guessed. Her name tag read LT, Harris. She took one look at the scene. The shaken elderly woman, the cluster of nervous civilians, the red-faced sergeant pacing like a caged bull, and sighed inwardly. "All right," she said, projecting calm authority. "I'm Lieutenant Harris. Nobody leaves until we talk to you. Nobody is under arrest at this time. We're here to find out exactly what happened. Sergeant Creighton, step into the consultation room, please." "I should be running this," he muttered. "You're involved," she replied, tone sharp but controlled. "That makes you a subject, not an investigator. Inside now." Murmurs rippled again. People exchanged glances. Several looked at Keanu as if to check whether they were allowed to feel relieved. His subtle nod seemed to give them permission. Creighton stormed into the small room and slammed the door behind him. Morneau and Diaz began organizing the crowd, taking names, asking people to line up by who'd seen what from which angle. The pharmacist pulled security footage from the ceiling cameras. A teenage boy eagerly offered to airdrop his video to the officers, hands shaking with a mix of adrenaline and indignation. Keanu remained beside Helen, speaking in low tones, asking occasionally if she wanted water or a different chair. She kept shaking her head, as if too stunned to move. "Is there anyone we should call?" he asked eventually. "Family, a neighbor?" Helen blinked back tears. "My granddaughter," she said. "She's at work. She'd worry if she knew, but I suppose she should." "May I?" Keanu held out his hand. She fumbled with her phone, passing it to him. He placed the call, introduced himself simply as a bystander, and gently explained what had happened, leaving out the gun until she asked directly. There was a shocked silence on the other end, then a fierce, angry voice, "I'm on my way." When he hung up, Helen looked at him with a mixture of gratitude and embarrassment. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean to drag you into anything. You were just sitting there minding your own business." Keanu shrugged lightly. "Sometimes minding our own business stops working," he said, "especially when someone's frightened." She blinked. "You weren't frightened." "Of the gun," he considered. "Guns are dangerous, but I was more worried for you than for me." Her eyes filled again, but this time the tears carried something softer, relief, perhaps, or the strange comfort of being believed after a moment that made her feel small and foolish. Lieutenant Harris approached them after a while, a notepad in hand. "Mr. Reeves, isn't it?" she asked. He offered a small smile. "Yes, ma'am." I've seen your movies," she said, clearing her throat. "But I'm going to speak to you exactly the way I'd speak to anyone else. That all right?" "That's how I prefer it," he replied. She nodded. "Good. First, thank you for keeping things as calm as you could. According to about 20 different witnesses, your presence probably kept this from escalating even further." Keanu shook his head. "I tried," he said, but he still pointed a gun at her. Harris's jaw tightened. "We'll be reviewing bodycam footage and security video." "I don't think his camera was on," Keanu said quietly. "There was no indicator light." Harris scribbled something down. "That's a policy violation on its own," she muttered. "Can you walk me through what you saw from when he entered?" He did sparely, factually, without embellishment. He talked about the line, the way Helen had spoken up, Creighton's disproportionate reaction, the grab, the threat of detention, the escalating language, the gun. He didn't mention his own name unless she directly asked. "Did you ever touch him?" Harris asked. "No." "Did you threaten him?" "I suggested he put the gun away before this turned into a courtroom issue," Keanu said. "That's probably the closest thing." "That's not a threat," Harris said immediately. "That's common sense." She finished her notes, thanked him, then turned to Helen, who flinched a little at the attention. "Mrs. Morales," Harris said softly, "I'm so sorry this happened. I know that apology doesn't fix it, but I want you to hear it." Helen looked at her warily. "You work with him," she said. "I work for the department," Harris corrected gently. "And part of my job is making sure the department doesn't hurt people who are just trying to get their prescriptions filled." That seemed to ease something in Helen's posture. "I'll need your statement too," Harris continued, "but not right this second. Your granddaughter is on her way. We can wait for her." Eventually, statements were taken. Videos were transferred. The pharmacy slowly turned from crime scene back to place of business, though the air would feel strange there for days. When it was over, at least the immediate chaos, Harris asked if Keanu and Helen would be willing to come down to the station later that week to give formal recorded statements. "Of course," Keanu said. "I'll try," Helen added, still looking tired. "I don't get around as easily as I used to." "We'll send a car for you if you're comfortable with that," Harris offered. "Not with Sergeant Creighton," she added quickly. "He's been placed on administrative leave pending investigation." The words administrative leave didn't feel like enough, but they were a start. Helen's granddaughter burst through the doors not long after. She ran straight to her grandmother, wrapping her in a hug that almost knocked both of them over. "Are you okay, Nana, are you okay?" she kept repeating. Helen nodded into her shoulder, then pulled back. "It was awful," she whispered, "but I'm okay now." She gestured to Keanu, slightly embarrassed. He helped. The granddaughter turned, eyes widening as she recognized him. She caught herself. "Thank you," she said instead, voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for being there." Keanu shrugged again, uncomfortable with praise. "Anyone would have done it," he said. The entire pharmacy knew that wasn't true. They remembered how frozen they'd felt, how heavy their legs had been when the gun first appeared, how loud their hearts pounded as their minds screamed do something and their bodies did nothing. "Not everyone," the granddaughter said quietly, "but you did." He didn't argue. When the formalities ended, Keanu walked them to their car. He carried Helen's bag, made sure she was buckled in, and told them he'd see them at the station later in the week. As they drove off, he turned back toward the pharmacy, expecting to slip out unnoticed. Instead, a small cluster of people waited for him. The pharmacist, the man in work overalls, the mother with the toddler, the teenage boy who'd filmed everything. "Mr. Reeves," the pharmacist said, "we've decided to send our footage straight to Internal Affairs, plus a copy to an independent lawyer in case it goes missing somehow." Her eyes hardened. "We're not letting this get buried." The man in overalls nodded. "I already called the local paper," he added, "told them what happened, told them they can use my name." The mother hugged her child closer. "I've been telling my kids for years you have to stand up for people," she said. "Today I almost didn't. I froze. But watching you, I realized I can't keep doing that." The teenage boy shuffled his feet, cheeks flushing. I posted the video already," he admitted. "It's kinda blowing up," he winced. "Is that okay?" Keanu thought about it. "As long as you blur the old lady's face," he said. "She didn't ask for any of this." "I already did," the boy said quickly, "and I left out her name." "Then yeah," Keanu said. "Maybe it'll help make sure this doesn't happen again." That night the video did spread. Not just because a famous actor was in it, but because of the way the power dynamic flipped. People saw an officer pointing a gun at someone's grandmother over a spot in line. They saw panic and injustice, and then, without theatrics, they saw a man quietly standing between danger and someone who couldn't defend herself. Within 24 hours, the police department issued a public statement announcing a full investigation. Within 48, Creighton's history of complaints, most not sustained due to lack of evidence, surfaced in local news. This time there was evidence, too much to ignore. At the formal hearing a week later, Helen sat at a polished wood table, hands folded in her lap. Keanu sat beside her, not as a star witness, not as a celebrity, but as a neighbor, an ally, a fellow human being who'd happened to be 2 seats away when everything went wrong. She told her story. He told his. So did Diaz Morno, the pharmacist, the man in overalls, the mother, the teenager, and half the people who'd been in that pharmacy. When it was Creighton's turn, he tried to blame stress, disrespect, the so-called anti-police climate, even Helen's tone of voice. He mentioned Keanu's fame like it was some kind of setup. The footage didn't care. It showed reality from every angle. In the end, the board voted unanimously. Creighton was stripped of his badge, his gun, and his pension eligibility. Criminal charges followed: assault, brandishing a weapon, false detention. It wouldn't fix everything he'd done over the years, but it would stop him from doing more. After the hearing, Helen approached Keanu outside the station. The air was cool, the sky streaked with late-day gold. "Why'd you stay involved?" she asked quietly. "You could have left after that day. You're busy, important, I'm just—" She trailed off, unsure of the words. "You're not just anything," he said. "You're a person who was treated badly, and I was there. That makes it my responsibility too." She studied his face, searching for something. Finally, she smiled, a real one this time, small but bright. "You know," she said, "my husband used to say the world doesn't need more people who can win fights. It needs more people who can stop them from happening." Keanu chuckled softly. "Smart man." "He would have liked you," she said. He looked away, a little embarrassed. "I'm just trying not to look away anymore." Helen nodded, understanding more than he said. As he walked back to his car, he passed Diaz and Morno talking quietly by their cruiser. Diaz gave him a respectful nod. "Hey," Diaz called. "For what it's worth, you reminded some of us why we put the uniform on in the first place." Keanu paused, then nodded back. "Then it was worth it," he said. "Because sometimes the most unbelievable thing isn't a perfectly choreographed fight or a heroic stunt. Sometimes it's simply this: a whole room full of people who would have stayed silent yesterday, deciding that today they're going to speak."